Churches and temples are built to stand long after the worldly has crumbled. But every now and then a church building is abandoned. It's a good thing there is often good conscience among its parishioners. In New Orleans, taking back a church has reawakened the descendants of Irish immigrants, repairing broken memories of a sad story and a rich culture. The lights are coming on again at St. Alphonsus. For nearly 20 years, this church has been closed. It had been gradually abandoned by its parishioners. They simply moved out of this old neighborhood. Somewhere in time, the gold leaf was painted over with dull beige.
Before we took over the church, we had derelicts living in it for about 8 to 10 years. They had come in through the crawl spaces beneath the church, and this was a home for them. They used to start little fires in trash cans on the high altar here to keep warm in the winter.
From the first Mass celebrated here in 1857, it was an immigrant's church. That makes it all the more surprising how ornate and costly its decorations were. The money that poor Irish laborers paid to furnish their church is a testament to their pride in the community they had built here. That pride is still evident 136 years later in Bill Murphy, who is part caretaker, part historian for this beautiful Catholic church.
The money that they put into it, they could bring their family here and say, I built this with my hands. Because a lot of the people who contributed to the money to build the church actually physically helped erect it. And this was their artifact. This was an artifact of their culture.
Murphy knows firsthand why the descendants of the Irish immigrants who built St. Alphonsus left the old neighborhood.
Coming from. The great American dream was in this Irish section of the city, was to make enough money to move to the suburbs.
Kids move away and folks want to get jobs in other parts of the city and things like that. Does it just naturally happen?
When I was in grammar school here during the 40s, my friends would talk about, gee, my mom and dad are going to make enough money and buy a house in Gentilly, or move to Metairie. Now I run into them in the neighborhood. They come back to the church and say, how you doing? How are things going? We just moved back. I bought my dad's old house.
Really?
And they're moving back in the area.
Wow.
So they're coming back. They're even looking for their roots in this particular part of the city.
Something is igniting a new search for roots among Irish descendants in Louisiana. Perhaps it's that they see other ethnic groups interested in their cultural ties. At a pub on Toulouse Street, they're dancing the jigs and reels again. Irish Americans like Sister Bernadette McNamara say her people are getting together more than ever. Irish musical groups are touring, and that's meant new interest in the traditional songs, dances, and customs.
Every Saturday night she has students who dance here, and then we're all involved in the dancing. That's why I come here Saturday nights, for Irish dancing.
You enjoy that?
Oh, I do.
Is it authentic?
Very much so.
Barkeep Terry Folan has also seen the change in his customers' conversations.
People would show up with St. Patrick's Day for the idea of green beer or shamrock or leprechauns and that sort of thing that has, I suppose, much to do with Irish Americana and very little to do with Ireland. And when you have authentic pint of Guinness and a authentic bar, people have a tendency, I think, to start, the conversations change too. And when you have an Irishman sitting next to you, you're more likely to, for Americans, to be more likely to be interested in what their roots mean rather than what they think they've been told they mean.
Yes, I know it's a cliche talking about Irish history in an Irish pub, but this happens to be, in modern Louisiana, the only place that Irish Americans can come to experience some of the original culture.
At the turn of the 18th century, back when New Orleans was the second largest city in America, tens of thousands of Irish families found homes in this Catholic and, it's worth mentioning, anti-British city. Pub owner and Irishman Danny O'Flaherty.
The chieftains of Ireland left Ireland, went to Spain and France, and McCarthy's were part of the big chieftains who left Ireland. And their grandson ended up in Louisiana, and next thing, there was the famous Battle of New Orleans was fought in his backyard. And I think the famous, I don't know if I can quote what he said, but there was something in reference of, my grandfather left Ireland because of them, and here they are again out in front of my front yard.
The redcoats.
The redcoats.
There was nothing for him at home, only a dream across the sea.
It's the classic story of American immigrants with a cruel twist. The passage aboard English sailing ships was so miserable and filthy, many died en route. When they got here, they died by the thousands of yellow fever and cholera, and tens of thousands more fell while digging the New Basin Canal through the densest Louisiana swamps. 6 miles long, 60 feet wide, and 6 feet deep, from the heart of the city north to Lake Pontchartrain. A walk through Canal Street graveyards will reveal just a few of the family names. Most poor laborers were buried in unmarked paupers' fields. They unwittingly traded economic oppression in Ireland for just a chance here. Yet for the betterment of water commerce, many lost their lives.
Coming from the climate of Ireland into this climate was like a night and day difference. And this was a swamp then, yellow fever.
And if you're working out in the swamp digging a canal, thousands and thousands died.
They don't even know. They estimate from 15,000 to 30,000 died. But not just from yellow fever that was transmitted by mosquitoes. They didn't know that at the time. They call it the stranger's disease. It was also, there was alligators out there. My God, and you know, they're working, the tools of the day were wheelbarrow, pick and a shovel. They didn't have the equipment they had in the Panama Canal. So I think their feat was more than the Panama Canal, which the French started and Americans finished.
Irish immigrants soon rose above the caste of laborer to become boarding house operators, restaurateurs, and merchants. They especially gravitated to civic jobs as fire and policemen.
Gradually, as they wove themselves into the tapestry of the existing city, the French, the Creole, the German, the Spanish that was here, lots of them became respected people.
They made it. But somewhere along the way, like other groups with a strong cultural identity, blending in meant losing their traditions. A point of pride and remembrance is the restoration of St. Alphonsus.
All of it is very detailed, hand-wrought work. Even this altar of St. Joseph is interesting. This was called the altar of a happy marriage.
And you're finally able to restore it?
Yes.
Or starting to?
We're beginning.
Just beginning.
We're just beginning. We probably are looking at 10 to 20 years.
Retying some of the threads of our rich Louisiana culture.
For a very long time.
And it will be worth it.
I think so.